Hey guys, Jessica here. So today we're going to talk about the Medela Pump and Style Pro Professional. So this is the updated version of their Max Flow. This is the Pump and Style Max Flow. Despite the fact that this uses the name Pump and Style, it is not the same as the original Medela Pump and Style or the Pump and Style Advanced. The Pump and Style Advanced was really the one that when we talk about the Pump and Style and people have positive things to say about it, that is overwhelmingly the pump that we're talking about. That one was this little yellow pump. It had a flat faceplate. It sat in a box. Sometimes it came in a bag. It was innovative back in 2011 when I had my first baby. They launched the backpack version and they were really heavily marketing that. The Pump and Style Advance had really fast cycle speeds, a wide range of suction, and was the closest thing we have seen in a personal use pump to the Medela Symphony. Medela Symphony is this big behemoth of a multi-user hospital style pump. It is one of the stronger pumps on the market. It no longer has its like claim to fame that made it so popular because the Spectra S1, S2 tends to work really, really well for a lot of people. And it came in, Medela Symphony is a $2,000 pump. Spectra came in at under 200 when it launched back in 2014. And it basically annihilated the reputation of the Medela Symphony. Medela Symphony is primarily going to be found in hospitals. Sometimes we do it with rentals. It is a good pump. It's a very good pump. So when Medela started marketing this Pump and Style Pro, they heavily marketed as this was the research-backed version, the personal use version of that winning suction that we have with the Medela Symphony. Which was curious because we knew that the Medela Pump and Style Max Flow was garbage. If you look at social media, if you talk to actual LCs in practice, we do not like the Medela Pump and Style Max Flow. We see a lot of low supply. My moms who can respond well to this pump and do well with it really could do well with almost any pump. If it has any type of pull to the nipple, they're going to get a letdown. We didn't like this pump for a handful of reasons. One, there were no indicator lights on this, nothing that let you know what setting somebody was on. So when somebody was having trouble, we could not really determine were they using the pump correctly or not. Why Medela did that? I mean, this one was manufactured in 2021. There is zero excuse. By 2021, we already had several smart pumps on the market. There was no excuse for Medela to be manufacturing the Medela Pump and Style Max Flow in 2021. This was some like early 1990s technology. They dusted it off, they put a fabric loop on it, and they called it a day. So it was a flop. It had very difficult to work with settings. Oftentimes, we had a lot of issues. The way that this one created vibration was not like the Spectra. The Spectra works to create vibration by pulling, allowing it to stop, pull, allow it to stop, pull, allow it to stop. So for each cycle is actually pulling three separate times with increasing suction, which creates that micro vibration. But Spectra's micro vibration is very smooth. It's very even. Medela Pump and Style has it's basically a little rounded diaphragm, and then it has essentially a piston rod that acts as a battering ram and beats itself against it. So the suction was never consistent. When we would put it on a gauge, and I'll have the graphs for you in the blog that I'll link down below. When we put it on a gauge, we were seeing a lot of variability. So we had limited ability to tell what settings you were on. The stimulation range was not as good as it needed to be. It definitely needed to be stronger. It peaked at about 115 based on our calculations, but it was very weak. It had underwhelming performance. We do see a little bit of improvement with the Pro, but for them to say that they modeled this after the Symphony, I would expect smooth, even suction. I would expect a wide range in stimulation. Like the stimulation setting on the Medela Symphony goes all the way up to 250 mmHg. It has this really wide range. I would expect that if this was going to be modeled after it, we should have about 175 mmHg in a personal use pump on stimulation and 250 double pumping on expression. We What we got was indicator lights, guys, and we got a less expansive range on stimulation. So stimulation topped out on the Pump and Style Pro at 76 mmHg. You get 4 stimulation settings, and then you get 12 expression settings. That's it. You get a limited range of suction. It does not mimic the pattern that we see on the Medela Symphony. And you don't have to take my word for that. Go to the blog, check out the data. This is not a Medela Symphony to take home with you. Has the same battering ram style suction as the Max Flow. It does have indicator lights. That is an improvement, but that's an improvement over something Medela should never have asked us to cope with. So that's like the bare minimum. Like, congratulations, Medela. You made it slightly more user friendly, but your suction is now less user friendly. The vibration on this thing is really, really bad. It actually hurts. I think we're going to see a lot more nipple pain, a lot more vasospasm. Very few people are going to be able to tolerate this style of suction and to be able to use it for the amount of time it takes to exclusively pump. It's not battery operated, which is, again, this is ridiculous. When you open this motor up, which I will open this up in a couple weeks and I will show you what is inside. Because again, I don't want you to take my word for it. When I'm telling you, like, the Max Flow was garbage and the Pro is garbage with indicator lights, I'm not joking. It's actually really bad. There is a reason Medela's going to get away with this, though. It's because they're not marketing it to you and I. This is not going to be something that people are going to want to go pay cash for unless they are an uninformed consumer who had babies years ago when the Medela pump and style was one of the best pumps we had. I wish they still made the boxy Medela pump and styles with that really smooth suction. I really do. I think that that is what we need in a personal use pump. And hey, Medela, you own the patents to that. You could just bring that back and be like, just kidding, guys. We didn't mean to do this to you. Here's your old pump. Because even though it was old, it does need to be modified to be a closed system because we don't want mold building in motors. And we were getting mold inside of the Medela pump and style because of the way it was an open system. You could get condensation in the tubing. That said, we still open these machines and find mold in them because the backflow protectors fail. So that is something to consider is that even though it's a closed system, it is still, these motors are not actually very well protected. They're still single use items. And what we're wanting with the Medela pump and style is the original version, which would last for 3, 4, 5 babies. You could pass it along between women. Even though it was an open system, you weren't supposed to. We saw that it wasn't hurting milk supplies. So we'll leave the germ conversation for another day. It was not hurting milk supplies. But this is going to take milk supplies for the original user, and there isn't going to be much that we can do about it because most women need a little bit stronger stimulation or a wider range to be able to find what works for their body. So even if you respond well to the vibration, there's a very good chance that the stimulation mode is going to be too limited. It tops out way too soon. 76 mmHg, like, I'm secondhand embarrassed for Medela. That's not enough suction. I don't know why they're doing that to us. But then on expression, if you go up higher in suction after you get about 150 mmHg, it starts to slow down and it is much slower. The Medela Symphony's expression mode starts at 78 cycles per minute. This one starts at 51. So this one actually starts out slower than a Spectra. And it doesn't drop down a lot, but that's because it really doesn't do a whole lot in terms of range because it starts at about 115 mmHg in expression and it only goes to 250. So we've got this very limited range. It just has 12 little steps in between that. It's really not that impressive. But the biggest issue is going to be it's going to kill milk supplies and it's going to hurt because that suction is just, it's so erratic, which means you get some pulls that are not quite high enough, and then you get others that are shockingly high. So that number that we're telling you, that's kind of the peak suction. Not all of your suction is going to be at that because it's that battering ram style that the only way this happens is if they don't listen to moms. You know who wants this Medela Pump and Style Pro to exist? DMEs. DMEs are the durable medical companies that are selling you your breast pumps through your insurance. They want this pump to exist because people are like, oh, I want a Medela because Medela used to be one of the top names. And because we have this market, you're not constantly having a baby for the most part. We're seeing a lot more women having larger gaps between kids. So they come back years later and they're looking for a pump. Or they get recommendations from somebody who had babies years ago who, I would honestly say when I had my first baby who's in high school, Medela was one of the top names in the brand. Like, it was a great brand. It was a solid brand and it lasted for several kids. It was a good purchase, and that was before the Affordable Care Act. If this had to compete on the open market, if insurance was not paying for this nonsense, it would not exist. So the DMEs and the insurance companies are the reason that the Medela Pump and Style Pro has been unleashed on us. It is not a good thing. It does not benefit moms. The only people it benefits is Medela because they're making money off of it. The DMEs because they can sell it at a premium price, even though it's a low quality product, and insurance companies because they can get away. Everyone can afford to make a profit off of this pump because it's cheap crap. Just is what it is. So, all in all, no, this is never going to make it to my recommendations list. What about if we pair it with the cups? I like the Medela cups. They got that somewhat right. But if you pair this pump with the cups, and you could just quit pumping and get about the same effect for the average mom. Again, we're going to have that small number of people who are going to be successful and they're going to do well with it, but they would have done well with any pump. So they could have done that, but they could have also done it with any battery operated cheap Amazon pump for $39.99 versus this, which is going to be expensive to maintain because the Medela parts are more expensive to maintain. Again, it does not have a battery, but there is room in here that Medela could have given us a battery, and it's 2025. Why do we have a pump that doesn't have a battery while we're saying, oh, it's portable? Portable is in I can carry this monstrosity around with an external battery pack. It doesn't really fit neatly in any fanny packs. And it's really, really loud, like obnoxiously loud. And because of the way the vibration is made, it rattles any hard surface you set it on. It's just, this is not a good thing. So I hate when we have to do these pump chats. And what I'm telling you is we've had garbage unleashed on us, but we've had garbage unleashed on us. Medela, they gave us garbage with indicator lights. So an improvement because the lack of indicator lights was infuriating. But now with indicator lights, we can see it and know what it's doing as it fails us. You do the math on whether that benefits you. So hopefully that helps somebody. Hopefully it saves somebody from giving up their insurance benefits from this. We can almost always find you another pump that is going to be more effective. Almost always, unless this is the only pump you have access to, in which case my recommendation is going to be we've got to figure out how to get you at least a cheap pump off of Amazon because it's going to be a better pump. This is just all in all, it's not a good thing. So hopefully that helps somebody out there. Hopefully you don't give up your insurance benefits. If you did, I'm so sorry. You have totally been misled and you should be complaining to anyone and everyone that'll listen. So hopefully that helps and happy pumping.